Richardson was picked up yesterday at a New York bus station carrying a gun. He appeared in court in Manhattan today and a hearing was set for next week. Possible links between Richardson and John Hinckley, who was in custody after attempting to murder the president early last week, are also being checked. Richardson left letters in a hotel room saying he was going to kill Mr. Reagan, letters which also mentioned Hinckley. From New York, Michael Sullivan reports. President Reagan is said by his doctors to be recovering satisfactorily, and his temperature is back to normal. He's taken a brisk walk outside his hospital room. But his senior doctor at the hospital is reported to have said earlier that the president might have to stay there for another week until he's off antibiotics. NATO's defense ministers have warned the Soviet Union that an intervention in Poland would destroy the basis for arms control negotiations. In a statement agreed by all the ministers, NATO's Secretary General, Joseph Luntz, said that Russians had been engaged for the past week in increasingly menacing troop movements and other threatening activity around Poland. But our defense correspondent says the statement, an oral one read by Dr. Luntz, is seen as a snub to the American Defense Secretary, Mr. Weinberger. He wanted the stronger reference to arms control included in a written communique. Speaking to reporters in Bonn after the meeting, Mr. Weinberger said he wasn't even sure whether to believe the Russians when they said that the Warsaw Pact maneuvers had ended. The government's budget strategy is challenged today in a report by the All-Party Commons Treasury Select Committee, which is chaired by Mr. Edward Buchan, the prominent Conservative backbencher. The committee has been highly critical of Mrs. Thatcher's economic policies in the past, and today it questioned many of the Chancellor's measures in the budget, saying it saw little prospect of a sustained economic recovery. But at a news conference, some of the MPs on the committee didn't seem to be in accord over the report. Our economics correspondent was there.
It was, to say the least, an unusual press conference. A couple of dozen journalists sat silent for a while a handful of the MPs on the committee, although not all of them, argued among themselves. "I don't give a damn what's in the report," said one MP at one stage. When it was suggested that two paragraphs didn't seem to agree with one another, back came the reply from one member: paragraph 51 was drafted by a monetarist, 53 wasn't. Immediately followed by the riposte, one by a sensible chap, the other by a crank. And later, Conservative Anthony Beaumont Dark described a lot of the report as pious nonsense. Well, despite all that, the MPs are sure their dissent hasn't undermined the value of the report, which is broadly sceptical of very much of the government's budget policy. It was a tightening up when the economy was already in deep recession, they say. Ministers have claimed the budget wasn't a squeeze, but the committee are unconvinced. It's hard to discern any engine of sustained recovery